You don't belong here anymore, Mom. From today on, you're out of this family. Those were my son's words, spoken without hesitation, cutting deeper than any knife. He didn't yell. He didn't flinch. He simply looked at me across the Thanksgiving table as though I were nothing but an intruder who had overstayed her welcome. My own flesh and blood, dismissing me in front of his wife and children as if I were a burden he could discard. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. My name is Margaret Wilson, though people call me Maggie. I'm 69 years old, and I never imagined I would be sitting in a small apartment recounting how my own son turned against me. But life has a way of testing you in ways you never expect. And trust me, this story is worth your time. To understand how we reached that bitter Thanksgiving dinner, you need to know what came before. You need to know what it cost me to raise Michael, the boy who once clung to my skirts, the boy I once believed would never betray me. When his father, Harold, died suddenly of a heart attack, Michael was only 14. The grief nearly crushed me, but I had no choice but to keep moving forward. I worked double shifts at the diner, took in sewing jobs at night, and sold handmade quilts at the farmer's market on weekends. Every penny went toward keeping the lights on, paying the mortgage, and making sure Michael had the kind of life his father would have wanted for him. There were days when I skipped meals so Michael wouldn't have to. I remember heating a single bowl of soup and pretending I wasn't hungry, just so he would eat without guilt. I remember patching his sneakers with glue and thread, telling him it was fashionable, when in truth, we couldn't afford new shoes. But Michael was bright, ambitious. He wanted more out of life, and I wanted it for him. When he was accepted into law school, the tuition bill was staggering, but I didn't hesitate. I cashed out my modest retirement savings and sold the diamond engagement ring Harold had given me. It broke my heart, but the sparkle in Michael's eyes when he held that acceptance letter made it worth it. Years later, when he and his wife Sarah were ready to buy a house, they struggled with the down payment. Once again, I stepped in. I sold my car, the one Harold had taught me to drive, and wired them the money. Sarah thanked me politely, but Michael? He hugged me and whispered, "One day I'll pay you back, Mom." That day never came. Instead, I became the invisible backbone of their lives, funding school trips for the grandchildren, covering unexpected bills, transferring money whenever they said they were in trouble. For a long time, I told myself it was love, that this was what mothers did. But as the years passed, I began to notice the shift. The gratitude faded. The requests grew bolder. And somewhere along the way, my sacrifices became their expectation. So when Michael looked me in the eye that Thanksgiving and declared I was no longer family, I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I simply reached for the envelope I had prepared, tucked neatly inside my purse, because what he didn't know was that I had finally decided to stop being their silent provider and start being their reckoning. Harold's death left a silence so heavy, it seeped into the walls of our home. One day, he was pruning the roses by the back fence, humming the same off-key tune he always did, and the next, he was gone. 45 years of marriage ended in a heartbeat. The house felt different without him. His coffee mug sat untouched by the sink. The tools in the garage lay exactly where he'd left them. I still caught myself listening for his footsteps in the hallway at night, expecting him to come in and tell me to turn off the light. But all that greeted me was silence. Michael came over often in those first few weeks, Sarah trailing behind him with polite sympathy. They brought food, made arrangements, tried to fill the gaps I couldn't face. For a while, I believed we were closer than ever. My son was protective, reassuring me that I wasn't alone. But then, one Sunday afternoon at the kitchen table, Michael slid a stack of brochures toward me. "Mom," he said gently, "you can't stay in this house by yourself. It's not safe. It's too much for you. I looked around the kitchen, the subway tile backsplash Harold and I had chosen together, the farmhouse sink he'd insisted on, the island where we shared coffee every morning. This is my home, I whispered. Sarah leaned in, her voice calm but firm. We found a lovely senior living community, just 20 minutes from us. Independent living, with all the support services you'd ever need. Pool, activities, people your own age. You'd never have to worry again. People my own age. As if widowhood had turned me ancient overnight. I don't want a community, I replied, forcing a smile. I want my home. Michael sighed, rubbing his temples. Mom, think about it. 4 bedrooms, a yard, all the upkeep. Dad handled most of it. Do you really want to struggle with maintenance alone? He wasn't wrong. Harold had been the one to fix the leaky faucets, climb ladders to clean the gutters, mow the lawn in the summer heat. But admitting that felt like giving up the last piece of him I had left. For weeks they wore me down. Tours of retirement complexes, gentle reminders of safety and practicality. Finally, exhausted from fighting, I agreed. Selling the house was like tearing out my own heart. This was the place where Susan had taken her first steps, where Michael had broken his arm falling out of the maple tree, where Harold and I had slow danced in the living room on our 25th anniversary. Every corner held a memory. Every wall whispered a story. And I signed it away, with trembling hands. I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment that smelled faintly of industrial carpet cleaner. Beige walls, beige carpet, beige everything. Soulless, lifeless. My dining set looked ridiculous, crammed into the tiny eating area. The china cabinet Harold refinished couldn't even fit through the door, so Michael offered to store it in his basement. I laughed bitterly at the idea of visiting my own belongings like prisoners. The first month was the hardest. I woke each morning reaching for Harold, only to remember he wasn't there. And then I'd remember I wasn't home either. My husband and my house both gone within weeks. But grief wasn't the only thing waiting for me in that beige apartment. No, something else was coming. And it would test me more than widowhood ever could. I tried to make the beige apartment feel like home. I hung quilts I had stitched over the years, hoping their colors would soften the emptiness. I joined the book club in the lobby, tried water aerobics twice a week, even attended the social mixers with other widows and widowers, nibbling on store-bought cake. I smiled when I had to, laughed when expected. But every night, when the lights were out, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling and whispered Harold's name just to hear it. One evening, the phone rang. It was Michael. His voice was tight, anxious. Mom, I hate to ask, but we're in a bit of a cash flow problem. David's commission check got delayed and the mortgage is due tomorrow. Could you possibly? I didn't hesitate. Of course. How much do you need? Just enough to cover the mortgage. $3,200. We'll pay you back next week. I transferred the money that night, reassuring myself that family helps family. That's what Harold would have wanted. But the repayment never came. The following month, another call. This time, Sarah's car needed repairs. Then Emily's school trip deposit. Then Ryan's orthodontist bills. Each request delivered with just enough urgency to make refusal seem cruel. I told myself it was temporary. That young families go through hard times. That I was lucky to have the life insurance payout, Harold's pension, the money from selling our home. More money than I'd ever had in my life, sitting quietly in accounts that earned little but tempted much. By November, I had given them over $30,000. Mortgage payments, credit card minimums, school fees, even a family vacation to Mexico that they couldn't cancel. Michael always promised to pay it back. Sarah always assured me it was just until things stabilized. I tried to ignore the unease stirring inside me. I reminded myself of Michael's childhood, of the years when I sacrificed so he could have more. I told myself this was no different, that I was simply continuing to do what mothers do. But deep down, a quiet voice kept asking, why do they need help every month? That voice grew louder when I visited their house one Saturday. Emily left her phone unlocked on the coffee table while she ran upstairs to fetch something. I glanced at it only to close an app. But what flashed across the screen froze me in place. Sarah's Instagram. A photo of Michael and Sarah at an upscale restaurant, champagne glasses raised, smiles wide. The caption, celebrating another successful quarter, number, blessed number, living our best life. I sat there, numb. Scrolling further, a spa weekend in the mountains, a brand new BMW in the driveway. Sarah posing with a shopping bag from a boutique where a single dress cost more than my monthly groceries. I felt my stomach twist. Just 2 weeks earlier, Michael had called me crying about overdue bills and how they couldn't afford Emily's college application fees. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling of my beige apartment, the walls closing in. For the first time, anger replaced grief. For the first time, I questioned whether my son was telling me the truth. And in that moment, I realized I hadn't just lost my husband and my home. I was losing my son, too. The glow of Sarah's Instagram posts lit up my dark apartment as I scrolled, my glasses slipping down my nose. Each picture felt like a slap across the face. A weekend getaway to a luxury spa while I was wiring money for their emergency mortgage. A photo of Michael at a golf course, holding a brand new set of clubs. The caption bragged about how hard work deserves reward. Hard work? I whispered into the silence. Whose work was he rewarding, his or mine? I set the phone down and stared at the ceiling. Memories of Harold came flooding back, his calloused hands after double shifts at the plant, his quiet pride when we paid off the mortgage 10 years early, the way he'd drive the same rusty sedan until it rattled itself into the junkyard. He never wasted a penny, never asked for more than we had. He used to joke, Maggie, one day we'll take that trip to Italy. Just you and me. He worked his entire life for that dream. And yet, 6 months after he retired, he was gone. We never took that trip. Now, here was our son, squandering what we had built with lies and manipulation. I felt my throat tighten, not just with grief but with fury. Harold would be ashamed. He would be heartbroken to see the boy he raised turning his mother into an ATM. The next morning, Michael called again. His voice was soft, almost pleading. Mom, I hate to ask, but Emily's car insurance is due. Could you manage 800? Just for now? I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, forcing my voice to sound calm. Of course, sweetheart. I'll handle it this afternoon. But this time, I didn't transfer a dime. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the checkbook I hadn't opened in months. My hand hovered over the pen, trembling. Something inside me snapped. Enough was enough. That afternoon, I made an appointment with James Patterson, an attorney a friend from church had once recommended. Smart man, she'd said. Helps protect seniors when family takes advantage. James's office smelled of leather and coffee, the walls lined with law books. He looked younger than I expected, maybe mid-40s, with kind eyes behind wire-rim glasses. He shook my hand firmly. Mrs. Wilson, what brings you in today? The words spilled out of me like water breaking through a dam. The house I sold, the money I gave, the Instagram lies. By the time I finished, my voice was shaking. James leaned back in his chair, jaw tight. Mrs. Wilson, in legal terms, what's happening to you is called elder financial abuse. Your son and daughter-in-law are exploiting your love to fund their lifestyle. I swallowed hard. They're my family. Family helps family. He shook his head. Family helps when there's real need. Not to buy luxury cars and vacations while lying to you. You've already given them over $35,000 in 4 months. That isn't helping. That's being used. The truth stung like salt in an open wound. I had raised Michael to be honest, hardworking, responsible. Somewhere along the way, I had failed. James folded his hands. The good news is, you're not powerless. We can document everything: bank records, text messages, social media posts. We can freeze access to your accounts and protect your assets. And if necessary, we can pursue legal action. Legal action against my own son. The thought made my stomach churn. But as I sat there, the images of golf clubs, champagne dinners, and Sarah's smiling face burned in my mind. Maybe it was time to stop being silent. Maybe it was time to fight back. James slid a yellow legal pad across the desk. The first thing we do is build walls, he said. New bank accounts your son doesn't know about. Transfer your assets. Keep everything documented. When they come asking for more, you'll have the proof of every lie. I nodded, though my hands shook. Walls. That was what I needed. For years I had been giving and giving, tearing pieces of myself away, thinking love meant sacrifice. But James's words settled into me like bricks, solid, protective. We spent the next hour going through bank statements. Every transfer highlighted in yellow. $37,800 in total. My chest ached as I stared at the number. Enough to buy a new car. Enough for the trip Harold and I had dreamed of. Enough to start over. Gone. All gone. When I left James's office, I carried a folder heavier than any weight I'd borne as a mother. But I also carried something else: resolve. That weekend, I cooked a real dinner for the first time in months. Pot roast, Harold's favorite. I set the table with the good china Sarah had insisted wouldn't fit in my apartment. I used it anyway. As I lit a candle, I whispered to Harold, I'm fighting back now. For us. The next Monday night, the phone rang again. Michael's voice was urgent. Mom, we're in real trouble. The bank is threatening foreclosure. We need $25,000 to catch up on the mortgage. If we can pay, they'll work with us. But if not, I froze. 25,000. My fingers tightened around the receiver. How many months behind are you, Michael? A pause. Too long. 6. Maybe 7. 6 or 7. My mind reeled. All those months he'd told me the mortgage was current. All those months I'd sent money, believing I was saving them, yet the house had already been sinking. I need to think about it, I said carefully. Mom, please. If we lose the house, Emily and Ryan will have to change schools. Do you want your grandchildren uprooted because you wouldn't help? Guilt. The oldest trick in his book. For years, it had worked on me. But this time, James's words echoed. This isn't help. This is being used. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dim light of my apartment. Folder of documents spread before me. Harold's photo propped against a stack of statements. His steady smile stared back at me, as if urging me to hold my ground. At 3 a.m., I picked up the phone and dialed James's emergency line. He answered groggily, but alert. Mrs. Wilson? What happened? They want $25,000. I whispered. And if I don't give it, they'll lose the house. James was silent for a long moment. Then let them, he said finally. It's fraud. They took money under false pretenses. If you pay again, you're only feeding the fire. Sometimes the hardest love is no. I hung up, my heart pounding. For the first time I realized this Thanksgiving would not be about gratitude. It would be about war. The days leading up to Thanksgiving felt like walking on a tightrope. Michael's calls grew shorter, sharper. Sarah's texts turned colder. We need an answer. The bank won't wait. I kept my replies polite, but vague, stalling, while James gathered more records. Every ding of my phone felt like a demand, every voicemail a reminder that my own child saw me as nothing more than a lifeline made of money. One evening, Emily came to visit. 16 years old, all long limbs and nervous laughter, she plopped onto my sofa, scrolling through her phone. "Grandma," she said casually, "why did Mom say you can't afford my college applications? Don't you have money from the house?" The question caught me off guard. "What did she tell you exactly, sweetheart? That you're on a fixed income now and we shouldn't bother you." But she hesitated, cheeks pink. "I saw Dad's new golf clubs. They were like $3,000. I Googled them. My breath left me in a rush. 3,000. For clubs. While they cried poverty to my face, I managed a smile for Emily's sake, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "Thank you for telling me, darling." After she left, I sat in the quiet, fury and sorrow, mixing like acid in my chest. Harold had worked decades wearing the same boots until the soles wore thin. We'd saved coins in a jar to afford a modest vacation once every few years. And now, our son was throwing away thousands on toys while bleeding his mother dry. James's words replayed in my mind. Sometimes the hardest love is no. Thanksgiving was only days away. For years, Harold and I had hosted it in our home, carving turkey at the dining table, surrounded by laughter. Now, the tradition had shifted to Michael's house, and this year, they were expecting not just my presence, but my wallet. I knew what I had to do. I pulled the manila envelope from my drawer, thick with printouts of bank transfers, screenshots of Instagram posts, and James's drafted complaint for elder financial abuse. I slid it into my purse and zipped it shut. This Thanksgiving would not be about turkey or gratitude. It would be the day my son learned that his mother was no longer his victim. The house smelled of cinnamon and roasted turkey when I stepped inside. Sarah greeted me with a too bright smile, pressing a glass of wine into my hand, as though hospitality could erase months of lies. Michael hugged me stiffly, his eyes darting toward the purse slung over my shoulder. He had no idea that inside it lay the end of his charade. Dinner was pleasant on the surface. We talked about Emily's college plans, Ryan's basketball season, Sarah's latest decorating project. Laughter floated around the table like fragile glass, polished and artificial. But beneath it, tension coiled tight. I could feel Michael waiting for the moment to strike. It came after dessert. He set down his fork, exchanged a glance with Sarah, then cleared his throat. "Mom, we need to talk about the house." I folded my napkin carefully, keeping my voice calm. "Of course. Go ahead." We spoke to the bank. If we can bring the mortgage current by Monday, they'll work with us. But we're out of time. This is our last chance. We need 25,000. Loan, Sarah added quickly. "We'll pay you back with interest." Silence fell heavy over the table. Emily's fork clinked against her plate. Ryan stared down at his hands. I reached into my purse, the zipper sounding louder than it should have in that tense room. "Actually," I said, pulling out the manila envelope, "I brought something for all of you." Michael's face softened with relief. "Mom, you didn't have to. Open it." He frowned, sliding the stack of documents out onto the table. His eyes scanned the bank statements, the highlighted transfers, the screenshots of Instagram posts. His face drained of color. "What is this?" he demanded. "Documentation of every lie you've told me these past 4 months," I said, my voice steady. $37,800 money you said went to mortgages and emergencies, while you bought vacations, golf clubs, and champagne dinners. Sarah's hands trembled as she shuffled through the pages. Mom, you're taking this out of context. Really? I cut her off. What context makes it acceptable to steal from your own mother? Emily looked up, her voice small but clear. Dad, is it true? Did you lie to Grandma? Michael's jaw tightened. It's complicated, sweetheart. No, I said firmly, rising from my chair. It's fraud. And it ends tonight. The room erupted, Sarah pleading. Michael's voice rising, the children staring in horror. But I stood tall, envelope in hand, the years of sacrifice and silence behind me. This Thanksgiving would be remembered. Not for turkey or pie, but for the moment I stopped being their victim and became their reckoning. Michael's chair screeched against the hardwood as he shot to his feet, his face flushed with rage. Enough. If you can't trust your own son, then maybe you don't deserve to be part of this family. From today on, you're done. Don't come back here again. His words hung in the air like smoke from a fire, choking everyone at the table. Sarah pressed her hands to her mouth. Emily gasped, tears welling. Ryan stared wide-eyed, as though he couldn't recognize the man standing before him. And me? I laughed. Not a bitter laugh, not a broken one, but the kind of laugh that comes when you finally stop pretending. Slowly, I reached back into my purse. Well then, I said evenly, you'll definitely want to see the rest of this. I laid another folder on the table. Inside were two things: the report from the private investigator James had connected me with, and a stamped copy of the complaint we had filed with the Attorney General's office. Sarah snatched the top page, scanning frantically. Color drained from her face as she recognized the surveillance photos. Her and Michael dining at expensive restaurants, shopping in boutiques, smiling in vacation selfies, all cross-referenced with dates of my wire transfers. You hired an investigator? Michael's voice cracked between fury and disbelief. Of course I did, I said. Did you really think I wouldn't protect myself? Every luxury you flaunted while crying poverty is documented here. Every cent accounted for. And this, I tapped the stamped complaint, is already in the system. Elder financial abuse. Fraud. Both carry consequences far beyond losing a house. Sarah dropped the papers as though they burned her hands. Mom, please, you don't want to ruin your own family. Think about the children. Family doesn't steal, I said coldly. And as for the children, I glanced at Emily and Ryan, their eyes wide with fear and shame. They deserve to see what honesty looks like, to understand that actions have consequences. Michael slammed his fist on the table. You'd send your own son to jail? I met his gaze without flinching. I'd rather lose a son than lose myself. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the faint crackle of the fireplace. Finally, Emily whispered, her voice trembling. Dad, why would you do this to Grandma? Michael opened his mouth, but no words came. And in that silence I knew the power he thought he had over me was gone. Forever. The next morning, my phone buzzed before sunrise. First, Michael's voice hoarse, frantic, begging. Then Sarah, alternating between tears and threats. By noon, I had 17 missed calls, 43 text messages, and 2 emails. Mom, please, don't do this. You'll destroy us. We promise. It'll never happen again. I answered none of them. Instead, I met James in his office, sliding the thick folder across his desk. He glanced through it, nodding. They're panicking. That's good. It means they know the evidence is airtight. Within a week, their attorney reached out. They wanted to negotiate a settlement. At the conference table, Michael looked 10 years older, Sarah pale and drawn. Their lawyer tried to paint it as a misunderstanding, but James cut him off. This isn't a misunderstanding. It's elder financial abuse, and we have the records to prove it. Silence fell. Then I spoke. Here's what I want: full restitution of the $37,800, a written apology acknowledging the lies, and 6 months of financial counseling. In return, I won't pursue criminal charges. Sarah's eyes widened. We can't pay that all at once. Then you'll make payments. James replied flatly. 800 a month until it's complete. Miss one payment, and the complaint goes forward. Michael's shoulders slumped. For once, there were no excuses, no manipulations, just defeat. He nodded. Weeks later, I packed the last box in my beige apartment. Michael and Sarah had lost their home to foreclosure. But I was moving, too. This time, by choice. Michael, my younger son in Denver, had called after hearing what happened. Mom, come stay with us. Start fresh. The boys would love to have their grandma nearby. So I did. My new apartment overlooked the Rockies, sunlight pouring through wide windows. My dining set, the one Sarah said I couldn't keep, finally fit perfectly in its place. On Sundays, I baked Harold's chocolate chip cookies with my grandsons. Their laughter filled the kitchen in a way I thought I'd lost forever. Sometimes, at night, I still missed the house Harold and I had built. I still missed the man himself. But I no longer missed the illusion that Michael and Sarah's love was unconditional. Because now I understood something Harold had once told me. The hardest part of being a parent isn't catching your children when they fall, but knowing when to let them hit the ground, so they learn to stand on their own. And at last I was standing tall, too.